Alright, hello everyone, welcome back again to the Education Diary, day number 1 for the ethical hacking webinar. This is going to be something we are going to be working on some almost 2 days. So today is going to be the first day for the webinar for ethical hacking. And I think so the voice is coming fine. And also, let me check if everything is fine. Alright, that's awesome. So yeah, everything is fine. So personally, before starting, I'm just going to be telling you some of the very cool and great things before diving into the ethical hacking. The very first thing is like, of course, you can use your external SSD card to work on your softwares, right? So if you're using Mac operating system, so it's going to be really easy. You can just format up your this drive and then actually you can use some softwares. Let me just try to check or make you guys check how actually this works, right? So right now I'm using Mac operating system. So if you're having some external SSD card or hard drive which is of 1 TB or more than 1 TB, so what you can do is you can go to the external hard drive and you can go here and you can actually go for erase, right? So here actually there's an option of erase, and in erase you have to take the APFS like the partition, and once you have done, you can actually send all of your programs and softwares into that one. All right, let me try to check for some settings. All right, now I think so the voice is fine. So hope so that the voice is fine right now, because I may be using two mics at the same time. So I think so that's totally fine right now. All right. All right, let's go and check for what we were doing. All right. So as usual, like we are having some external SSD card. So what you can do is you can have a partition in the APFS format. And once actually you can basically send all of your applications from here to your external SSD card. And then from here only you can directly work on your software. So in actually, you are not going to install the softwares. But as usual, you can just use SSD card to run your softwares or games or any kind of applications via SSD. So you don't need to actually install into your operating system. Apart from that, if you're using Mac operating system, so I would personally suggest to have a software with the name VMware Fusion, right? It's a very great, we can say, software, VMware Fusion. So it's for personal use if you're a student, so you can actually get a free license, and then basically you can work on this particular software. And before diving into the field of security or ethical hacking, you can also use one of a very great software which is by the name Clyde. So this software actually helps you, like suppose if you're sitting in a cafe or anywhere and you just want to leave your laptop there, so if anyone actually closes your laptop, so it is going to be making a really loud sound of alarm or kind of like thing. So yeah, it's very loud, the sound is very loud. All right, so that is something which you can use in order to, you know, that for theft or any kind of that, preventing all those actions, right? So yeah, if you're going to be using VMware Fusion, it's a really great virtualization software, because as usual I am working on the virtual operating system, which is going to be as usual Kali Linux or Windows or Ubuntu or CentOS or any kind of like that. Now as usual, installing a kind of operating system is something which is really important, but we are not going to be covering that today, that how can we install a virtual operating system onto our Mac or on Windows, because that is something which is different. We can upload that into the channel, so you can check out from there. So I'm already using the Linux. So if you are going to be having Kali Linux, so make sure you basically have the Kali Linux, which is very important, right, operating system into the field of ethical hacking. So as usual, my SSD is connected. I'm going to be running my Kali Linux directly from my SSD, not from my main operating system. So if I double click on this, and this is going to be some screen, and this is basically the GUI interface of Linux. Now you have to understand that this operating system is running from SSD, not from the main operating system, so it is going to be kind of slow, not very fast, but as usual my laptop storage is basically getting saved, so I don't actually need to worry for that. Now, if you're really new to Linux, it is suggested to check out some of the previous series of webinars which we took, which were based on the Ubuntu or introduction to Ubuntu, and there we were having some basic commands, right? So this is going to be your first interface when you're going to be booting up your Kali Linux, which is of course a very famous operating system into the field of ethical hacking, right? So you can basically write up your username. So my username is this, my password is same. So I'm not having a very complex password because this is my virtual operating system which I'm running inside my Mac, of course from the SSD. All right, so now apart from that, the important part, today we are going to be having some really cool stuffs in ethical hacking. This webinar is going to be a long webinar. We are going to be checking out some techniques of hacking or something like that, what can be the basic things, right? So yeah, this is going to be your interface of the Linux machine. Before diving into, let's check out some really good stuffs. I'm going to be using up my Firefox browser in Kali Linux, and we are going to be visiting one of a very famous website which not many people know, but if you are going to be in ethical hacking, so we can go there. It's going to be for the phishing. Now of course, if you know about phishing, so it's kind of like a very famous kind of attack, right? So what I can do is I can go for this particular website. Let's change to English, and this is a website which we are going to be using today as an introductory part, which is the Grabify IP logo or the URL shortener. Before that, let me just go and check for the Education Diary website. So once again, whatever we are doing is basically for educational purpose. So don't take all these things and that go and whatever. So what I'm going to do is, by the way, you can visit to the Education Diary website, you can check for the programs and the courses, and you can actually get certifications also. So it's a really great thing. You can just go on there and make sure to take some certifications from the Education Diary in the field of ethical hacking or big data or artificial intelligence or whatever. So there are tons and tons of courses. Now I'm going to copy the link of our website. Now as usual, we do have permission of using our own website, so we are not going to be taking any other website. Now I'm going on this particular Grabify website here. Now this website is something which is pretty easy to understand. The UI is really easy. I'm going to be paste the Education Diary link here, and I'm going to be clicking on create URL. Right, so once I create, I agree and create URL, and that's it. It's going to be taking some time, so this is going to be a second step, tracking and logs, view the detailed logs for your link. Right, there are going to be some ads, so make sure to ignore that. All right, and you are going to be having a new URL. So this is actually a new URL, and the tracking code is this. Now suppose if I copy this new URL, right? Suppose if I copy, and if I go down, if I click on hide bots, right? And if I just copy this and I just open a new tab and I just paste this copied one, if I hit enter, so you can see that by using that link, our link is actually redirecting to the Education Diary website. All right, so even though I copied a link which was not of the website, but still somehow we came onto this website. But if I go on to the previous website, let's close this. So let's go down, and if I'm going to refresh the page, so all right, yeah, so we have at least one result. And if I click on this, like suppose if I click on more info here, and here is going to be the details of my operating system, right? So IP, if you were using your mobile phone or Windows or whatever, So that is actually going to be there, right? So country is South Korea. So as usual, I am in South Korea right now. The browser I am using is Firefox. Operating system is Linux ARM. User agent is of course Mozilla, Linux, Firefox. ISP is Korea Telecom. All right. So yeah, if you understand, if I send you this link right now, like suppose if I'm going to be sending you this link, https grabify link and blah blah blah. So this is actually going to be something you will be getting details of. User is Safari, the operating system is Mac. So that is going to be something really important into the field of ethical hacking. All right, so now Grabify, if a person who is not a techie, who is kind of like not very into, can actually click on these kind of links. But suppose if a person is having some knowledge of IT, so in that case we can actually use some URL shortener services who are going to be shorten our URL, and based on that you can tell to the person, hey, see my website. All right, so this is the URL shortener. So it's not going to be very hard for a person to, that not click on that website. So if I search for some services, so like suppose be searching for URL shortener. Now there are tons and tons of URL shorteners. Some of them actually works, some actually doesn't work. So let's try any service if it can work, and it is going to create a new URL. If I paste this grab, now remember that this link will redirect us to the Education Diary website, right? So make sure to remember that stuff. So if I click on shorten URL, in some cases it will not work. So yeah, here actually you can see now we are having a new link which is having shorter.me. Now and actually you can tell up your colleagues, see, actually I've created a website, or this is my website, please make sure to visit it there. All right, so a person can immediately this link, I paste it here. So let's see now if this link takes me to the Education Diary or not. So yes, you can see that it basically took me to the Education Diary, right? So of course I'm going to be getting details on the Grabify. So of course that's a common thing, right? I hope so that you guys have understand this very basic thing, not very complex to understand, not kind of like very hard things, advanced things, learning commands in Linux. It was really easy by using some online website. All right, this was something first which is pretty easy to do nowadays. So that's why it's suggested only to click on the links which you actually trust. Now, of course, if someone says, hey, see, I have my own website, check out this. So you have to check for the link if the link is having some real names there or kind of like the website name there. If it is not there, so you have to like something trust or not trust. That's totally up to you. But again, the thing comes is the trust issue. In the field of hacking, everything is based on the human trust. So yeah, that is something which is really important. Apart from that, let's go for something a new practical, right? So let's close this. Now again, I'm going to be using a website which is Whois, and personally I use domain tools. All right, so this particular website I often use to check out the authenticity of a website or authenticity of that organization, right? So this is a really great tool which can give you some basic information about the company or about the organization. So here you can see enter a domain or an IP address. So what I can do is actually I can take my own website and let's copy and let's paste it here, and I will click on search. All right. So once if I click on search, it is going to be taking some captchas. So let's complete this. By the way, yeah, it's really required so that there cannot. Let's wait for some time. There are 4 changes on 5 unique name servers over 2 years. So since 2 years, there are some changes between these servers, right? And of course, Hostinger International Limited is basically the organization which has hosted the website. Now, of course, once you're using the website for almost 1 year, 2 years, then it's going to be having some Whois records. All right, so that is something which we can do. Now suppose if I just take something which is going to be having which we can test on, let's take any other website. So we can take Aquanetics. Now please ignore these spellings, right? I'm using the keyboard, so make sure to ignore. It doesn't really matter if I'm writing the correct spellings or not. So yep, let's take this particular website and let's check out some whois record of this one. Now this is a vulnerable login page. Of course, we are going to be checking this in a moment. All right, so it's taking time. It's taking time. All right, so let's copy this link, and now let's again go for the whois, and let's try to find some whois info. I can take the IP address, or I can take the link of that university, and then basically I can search about that university. So here actually you can see that the main website is vulnerweb.com, and of course, yeah, now here that is something good details. Can I zoom? The 8 days old. This website is going to expire in 2025. This website was being updated in 2023. Of this website is basically in Oregon, and of course the main company or the parent organization is Amazon, right? So yeah, you can actually read all these things also if you want. What is the registrant email address, so that if there is any problem, then you can send the email to the admins who are managing this particular website. Now as usual, my main purpose of telling this was, like, suppose if you want to get some information about any website or organization, so you can actually try these domain tools, kind of like services or websites, in order to extract information about those things. Now in terminal, if you're using Linux, we can actually use this. Let me just increase the size so that you can see, and I think so that, all right, so we can actually use the command whois in the terminal also in the Linux. Like suppose if I'm going to be taking man whois, so yeah, so the command actually man before any kind of tool or service, if you're using in Linux, like man whois man. If I hit enter, so here actually you can see the description. Whois searches for an object in a RFC 3912 database. So there is a database, of course, of all the websites which are being registered, or the websites which are online, or kind of like that, right? So this is something which is given, the right server, so you can actually read all these things. And how to use this tool is of course also given. So you can use whois space -h for host, connect to host, port, and verbose. So verbose is something which basically tries to get information by active and passive reconnaissance. Once again, if you're going to be starting in ethical hacking, so you're of terms like information gathering, reconnaissance, active and passive information gathering, then of course enumerations, data manipulations, encapsulation. So of course we are having tons and tons of things. I will simply be clicking on Q for quitting the man. Now again, if I'm going to be taking whois, let's take google.com. all right, so I'm simply going to be writing, or I'm simply going to be pasting the link of the website or organization about which I want to search, or about which I want to gather information inside my Linux. So if I hit enter, it will take some time, and yeah, here actually you can see, yeah, here we are having some information. This one and the updated date. So it's basically being updated. The google.com was being updated in 9/2009 creation date. So Google came online on this particular year, 1997, right? So Google was actually being on the internet in year 1997. Restaurant expiration date, so google.com is going to be expiring in 2028. Who is the registrar? That is basically Mark Monitor. And of course, if you want to have any complaint about the website like google.com, if you find any kind of bug, vulnerability, so you can actually send the email to here. And of course the phone number, right? So you are going to be having some information. Restaurant organization is Google LLC. The state is California, of course in US. So yeah, this is something which you can understand. And of course we are going to be having some name servers here. Of course Google is using 4 backup servers. So that is something which we can actually check on. Now again, searching or scanning Google is something which is fine, which is okay. But if you're going to be taking whois for an organization or kind of like a website, so it's something which you can take permission from the website owner. So that is something recommended. Otherwise, doing this kind of scan is something which is totally fine, right? If you want to scan any website, it's totally fine, but it's suggested if you can take permissions to take it. Otherwise, it's totally fine, because whois basically searches from the database. So it's not coming in the field of hacking, but it is something which is coming in the field of information gathering. All right, now let me just clear the screen. And I think so that is something which is really important. Now we are going to be having some more and more things. If I'm not wrong, we might not be having burp suite. Now if I'm going to be taking burp suite, now that is something which is a very great software in order to use, in order to explain. Now if I'm going to be using this command, apt install burp suite. Now burp suite is a software which is used inside the Kali Linux. By the way, you can install on Mac or on Windows separately. You can just search on Google, download burp suite for Windows or Mac, right? But I'm going to be installing my Kali Linux because I don't want to cover a lot of storage on my Mac. I just want a temporary thing, so I'm going to be clicking and installing on my Linux machine. So it will take some time because this is kind of like a community version. There are two kinds of versions in this burp suite. It can be community version, which is totally free. One is going to be a professional, for which you have to upgrade and pay something, or you have to take some license. Now in hacking, of course, for information gathering, for finding someone from the email, from the numbers, from IP locations, or creating viruses, payloads, malicious softwares, or malicious trojans, all these things basically can take tons and tons of time. Today's webinar is something which is just, it's not going to be very advanced, because advanced do have some coding stuff which can be in C# or C++ programming language. By the way, in the coming time, we might be having some programming, we can say tutorials or programming webinars through which you can understand from the very starting, from Python or from C++ or C#, JavaScript. For me personally, I just always works on C++ or C#. I'm not good in Python, being frank with you. Python as my primary programming language. But I think so there are many people who are in the education diary who knows Python really well. So yeah, let's wait for some time. And I think so the software has been downloaded. Now it's going to be installed in the Linux machine. So the software size is at least 299 MB, right? So the software is around 300 MB. All right, so it's done. Now what I can do is basically I can just execute the command burp suite, right? So it will automatically detect, and I just need to hit enter. So, okay, so it's really small. I accept. All right, so the font is really small in this software. Let me just go to the settings. Let's go appearance. So if I select, no, it's not going to be working fine. So I think so it's not working properly because I'm using in the virtualized manner. All right, so let's quit this. Let's have something else if we can. All right, let it be. Maybe because I'm using it not actually from my Mac, I'm just using it directly from SSD, so that's why there might be some software issue. All right, let's go to something else. Now the another thing which we can use in the form of hacking is something search exploit. Now what is search exploit? So this particular command can actually find the weaknesses or kind of viruses or trojans which we can make for the different devices. Like suppose if I'm just using search exploit and after that I'm writing Samsung, right? So suppose if I just use search exploit and I will just write Samsung, or I will just write iPhone or iOS, Mac or whatever. So I can write any company's name here, all right? So it is going to be giving me the forces or form of trojans or the weaknesses of those devices, payloads or viruses, and we can attack those devices. Now if I hit enter, so here you can see that we are going to be having some different form of viruses for the Samsung, right? So for Samsung, we are having M2M1 short, kernel driver buffering, some spam text in that one, right? So again, it's going to be Siren kernel driver. Of course, it is also based on Android, DOS. So Samsung, this is basically for Windows. Now Samsung laptops are also there. So if you know, then Samsung is of course having some laptops. So this is based on Samsung Windows laptop, right? So Android have gone, it's based on Android. Now this particular is going to be based on TV, D6000 TV, right? So of course we are going to be having some Samsung TVs, and of course that is kind of like attack on the hardware. Now this is going to be on Android here, and here you can see we are going to be having some Galaxy Knox. For Android browser, we are going to be having Galaxy S6. We are going to be having some Galaxy S6 again. Here again, it's going to be based on Samsung Gallery Attack, Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge, and we are going to be having tons and tons of other things as well, right? This was just an example, and by using all these particular weaknesses, we can create a kind of like virus. Or going to be searching for something which is Mac. So here also you can see that for Mac also we are having some multiple we can say what attacks, right? So these are some machines, ignore this. Now here is something which is Mac OS, right? Let's search for Mac OS so that we can only get for the Mac OS. All right, so here actually you can see we are having so many kind of different attacks for the Mac OS operating systems, right? Again, it is going to be based on some DOS, iOS, Mac OS X, which is going to be in the form of MacBook, right? So yeah, you can actually study this in more and more detail. My this webinar is something which is not something which is going to be telling you how to do all kind of attacks or how to hack. This is just going to be an introductory and telling you what actually we are having in hacking and what we can do in hacking, right? Again, you're going to be having some shellcode. That means now something which we can do is introduction to the CVE. So if you don't know about the CVE, this is something which is really important to understand. So CVE is basically common vulnerability exposures. Now this is a very, very important website for the people who are in cybersecurity or ethical hacking, can be anything, right? So yeah, you can actually go and you can check on the CVE. Now this is the metric operation. Now again, you can click on CVE, you can search for that device, and you are going to be having, until unless this website is actually opening, let me just give you some basic informations about some of the really great industry based certifications from the ethical hacking industry. The very first I would know is going to be the CEH, which is the certified ethical hacker, which basically the EC Council gives you. Now this examination is really easy. It's around not 500, around $1,000 or around $1,500. So it's going to be having an examination, so you can actually clear this and you're going to be having the CEH certification, which is something really great in the field of ethical hacking. Apart from that, we are going to be having the CCNA, which is associate, or sometimes we say Cisco certified network admin. Now in the field of ethical hacking, you need to understand the networking, how the network actually works, what are different kind of protocols like OSCP or sorry OSPF, EIGRP, RIP, RIP, and of course there are tons and DHCP, right? So CCNA is something which gives you a very strong conceptual foundations in the field of networking, right? So CEH, CCNA. Apart from that, you can go with the OSCP, Offensive Security Certified Professional, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, OSCP is something which is kind of like really great certification with the Kali Linux, right? So you can go on the website and you can actually check more and more about the OSCP certification. Apart from that, there is going to be a really great organization which basically for the ID. So